In the marble corridors of Ravensholm Palace, where centuries of royal secrets echo through gilded halls, one guard's loyalty would determine the fate of a dynasty. What began as whispered conversations in shadowed alcoves would ignite a scandal so explosive that it threatened to topple the very foundation of the monarchy. When duty collides with deception, and truth becomes a weapon more dangerous than any sword, even the most trusted allies can become the architects of ultimate betrayal. The autumn rain drummed against the tall windows of Ravensholm Palace as Captain Marcus Sterling adjusted his ceremonial uniform and began his evening patrol. 23 years of faithful service to the crown had taught him to notice the subtle changes in palace routine, the barely perceptible shifts in atmosphere that often preceded significant events. Tonight felt different, charged with an undercurrent of tension that made his instincts prickle with unease. Marcus had served under 3 monarchs during his distinguished career. He had witnessed coronations, state funerals, royal weddings, and countless diplomatic ceremonies. His unwavering loyalty and discretion had earned him the position of senior palace guard, responsible for the most sensitive areas of the royal residence. Tonight, however, something in the air suggested that his skills would be tested in ways he had never imagined. As he walked through the East Wing corridor, his polished boots clicking rhythmically against the marble floor, Marcus noticed an unusual flurry of activity in the private quarters. Lady Catherine Ashworth, the Queen Consort, had dismissed her usual evening attendance earlier than customary. Her personal secretary had left the palace grounds entirely, which struck Marcus as particularly odd, given the upcoming state visit from the neighboring kingdom of Aldermere. The Queen Consort had always been a figure of grace and dignity, beloved by the people for her charitable works and unwavering support of her husband, King Edward. However, recent months had brought subtle changes to her behavior that only someone with Marcus's trained eye for detail would notice. She seemed more guarded, more careful in her movements, and there had been several instances of unscheduled departures from the palace that weren't reflected in the official court calendar. Marcus paused outside the Queen Consort's private study, noting that a soft glow emanated from beneath the heavy oak door. The official schedule indicated that Lady Catherine should have retired to her chambers by now, yet clearly she remained engaged in some form of business. His training dictated that he should continue his patrol without interference, but something about the situation demanded his attention. The muffled sound of voices reached his ears, causing him to step closer to the door. Protocol strictly forbade eavesdropping on royal conversations, but Marcus recognized his duty to ensure the safety and security of all palace residents. What he heard through the thick wood made his blood run cold with the implications of the whispered exchange taking place within. Lady Catherine's voice, usually melodious and refined, carried an edge of desperation that Marcus had never heard before. She was speaking to someone whose voice he didn't immediately recognize, though the masculine tone suggested a visitor whose presence hadn't been officially documented in the evening's security briefings. The conversation seemed to revolve around documents, arrangements, and what sounded distinctly like plans for a clandestine departure from the palace. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as fragments of the conversation became clearer. References to the arrangement, discretion, and before William discovers painted a picture that contradicted everything he believed about the Queen Consort's character and loyalty. The mention of Prince William, the heir apparent, in such a context suggested that whatever was transpiring involved the very succession of the throne itself. The weight of his discovery pressed heavily upon Marcus's shoulders as he considered his options. His oath of loyalty to the crown created a complex web of obligations that suddenly seemed to conflict with one another. Was his primary duty to protect the Queen Consort's privacy, or to safeguard the monarchy itself from potential scandal or betrayal? The answer to that question would determine not only his own future, but potentially the stability of the entire kingdom. As the conversation inside the study continued, Marcus began to piece together fragments of what appeared to be a carefully orchestrated plan. The Queen Consort seemed to be making arrangements for a secret meeting, one that required significant planning and coordination with outside parties. The timing, coinciding with the upcoming state visit, suggested that whatever was being planned would take advantage of the chaos and distraction that such events typically created within the palace. Marcus's military training kicked in as he began to mentally catalog the security implications of what he was discovering. If the Queen Consort was indeed planning an unauthorized departure from the palace, It would create massive vulnerabilities in the royal security apparatus. More concerning was the potential for such actions to be exploited by hostile foreign agents or domestic enemies of the crown. The conversation inside the study began to wind down, and Marcus realized that he needed to retreat to avoid detection. As he quietly moved away from the door, his mind raced with the implications of what he had overheard. The fragments of conversation suggested that this was not an isolated incident, but rather part of a larger pattern of secretive behavior that had been developing over several months. Back in his quarters later that evening, Marcus sat at his small desk and tried to process the full magnitude of his discovery. The Queen Consort, a woman he had sworn to protect and serve, appeared to be engaged in activities that could potentially compromise the security and stability of the monarchy. The ethical dilemma he faced was unlike anything covered in his training or experience. Sleep eluded Marcus that night as he wrestled with his conscience and his duty. By dawn, he had reached a decision that would forever alter the course of his life and potentially reshape the future of the kingdom. The question was no longer whether he should act on his discovery, but rather how to proceed in a manner that would best serve the crown and the people who depended upon the stability of the monarchy. The morning brought new urgency to Marcus's situation, as he observed increased activity around the Queen Consort's quarters. Additional security measures were being quietly implemented, suggesting that whatever plans were in motion were accelerating toward implementation. Marcus realized that if he was going to act on his discovery, time was rapidly running out. As he prepared for his morning briefing with the security detail, Marcus made the fateful decision that would earn him a place in the kingdom's history as either a hero who saved the monarchy or a traitor who destroyed the life of an innocent woman. The truth, he knew, would depend entirely on what investigation would reveal about the Queen Consort's true intentions and the nature of her secretive activities. The palace seemed to hold its breath as Marcus walked toward the security office, the weight of his knowledge pressing upon him like a physical burden. In his pocket, he carried notes detailing everything he had observed and overheard, documentation that would either vindicate his actions or destroy his career and reputation forever. The ultimate betrayal, he reflected grimly, might not be the Queen Consort's actions, but rather his own decision to expose them. Part 2. The morning briefing room fell silent as Marcus Sterling presented his findings to Commander Harrison Wells, the head of palace security. The older man's weathered face remained impassive as he listened to Marcus's detailed account of the previous evening's discovery, though his fingers drummed nervously against the polished conference table. 27 years of protecting the royal family had taught Harrison to expect the unexpected, but nothing had prepared him for allegations of this magnitude against the Queen Consort herself. Harrison studied the notes that Marcus had carefully prepared, cross-referencing times, locations, and observed activities with the official palace schedule. The discrepancies were undeniable and deeply troubling. Lady Catherine's movements over the past several weeks painted a pattern of deception that called into question not only her loyalty but also the effectiveness of the entire security apparatus that had failed to detect her activities. The decision to involve Prince William in the investigation was not made lightly. As heir apparent, he had both the authority and the right to know about potential threats to the crown, even when those threats came from within the royal family itself. However, the personal cost to the prince, who had always maintained a close relationship with his stepmother, weighed heavily on both security officers as they prepared their briefing. Prince William received the initial report in his private study, a book-lined sanctuary where he often retreated to handle the most sensitive matters of state. At 38 years old, the prince had already demonstrated the wisdom and composure that would serve him well as king. But the allegations against Lady Catherine tested his emotional resilience in ways that no amount of royal training could have prepared him for. The prince listened without interruption as Harrison presented the evidence, his expression growing more grave with each revelation. The implications extended far beyond personal betrayal. If the Queen Consort was indeed engaged in unauthorized communications with outside parties, it could compromise state secrets, diplomatic relationships, and the very security of the realm. The potential for blackmail or coercion added another layer of complexity to an already explosive situation. Marcus found himself under intense scrutiny as Prince William questioned him directly about his observations. The prince's penetrating gaze seemed to search for any hint of ulterior motive or personal agenda that might have colored Marcus's interpretation of events. However, the guard's 23-year record of exemplary service and his obvious reluctance to make such serious allegations lent credibility to his account. The investigation that followed required delicate balance between thoroughness and discretion. Prince William authorized a covert surveillance operation designed to gather additional evidence without alerting Lady Catherine to their suspicions. The irony was not lost on any of them that they were essentially spying on the Queen Consort, a woman who had spent years supporting the monarchy and raising William's younger siblings with apparent devotion. Over the following week, the surveillance operation yielded disturbing results that confirmed Marcus's initial observations. Lady Catherine was indeed maintaining unauthorized contact with individuals outside the palace, using encrypted communication methods that suggested a level of sophistication inconsistent with innocent activities. The timing of these communications, often coinciding with sensitive royal business, raised serious questions about potential intelligence breaches. The breakthrough came when surveillance detected Lady Catherine making preparations for what appeared to be a clandestine meeting scheduled to occur during the state visit from Aldermere. The visiting delegation would provide perfect cover for unusual movement within the palace, making it nearly impossible to track all personnel and activities during the heightened security preparations. It was, Prince William realized, an ideal opportunity for someone seeking to conduct secret business without detection. Prince William faced the most difficult decision of his life as he reviewed the accumulated evidence. The woman who had helped raise him, who had stood beside his father during the most challenging periods of his reign, appeared to be engaged in activities that threatened the very foundation of everything they had worked to build. The personal betrayal cut deeply, but the potential threat to the crown demanded decisive action. The decision to involve the intelligence services marked a point of no return in the investigation. Once outside agencies became involved, the possibility of containing the scandal within the royal family disappeared entirely. Prince William understood that he was potentially destroying Lady Catherine's reputation and position forever, but his duty to the crown superseded personal considerations. The intelligence briefing revealed connections that none of them had anticipated. Lady Catherine's mysterious contacts were linked to a network of individuals with known ties to foreign intelligence services and domestic political opposition groups. The full scope of her involvement remained unclear, but the potential for compromised state secrets and manipulated royal decisions created an immediate national security concern. As the state visit approached, Prince William authorized the implementation of a plan designed to expose Lady Catherine's activities while minimizing potential damage to the monarchy. The operation would require careful coordination between palace security, intelligence services, and trusted members of the royal staff. Most importantly, it would need to be executed without alerting Lady Catherine to their knowledge of her plans. Marcus found himself assigned a crucial role in the operation, his detailed knowledge of Lady Catherine's recent behavior making him an invaluable asset in predicting her movements. The irony that the guard who had first discovered her deception would play a key role in exposing it was not lost on anyone involved in the planning. The emotional toll on Prince William became increasingly apparent as the operation moved forward. Staff members noticed his withdrawn demeanor and the obvious strain in his interactions with Lady Catherine during official functions. The prince struggled to maintain normal family relationships while knowing that everything he believed about his stepmother might be a carefully constructed deception. Lady Catherine, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to the investigation swirling around her. She continued her preparations for the upcoming state visit with apparent enthusiasm, her public demeanor showing no signs of the stress that should have accompanied someone engaged in dangerous clandestine activities. This composure either indicated remarkable self-control or suggested that she genuinely believed her activities remained undetected. The final surveillance reports before the state visit painted a picture of a woman completely committed to whatever plan she was implementing. Lady Catherine had made arrangements that extended beyond the immediate meeting, suggesting that the upcoming encounter was merely the beginning of a longer-term strategy. The implications of this discovery added urgency to the operation and reinforced Prince William's determination to see it through to its conclusion. As the first day of the state visit dawned, all the pieces were in place for what would either vindicate Lady Catherine or expose her as a threat to the crown she had sworn to serve. Marcus Sterling, the guard whose loyalty had initiated the entire investigation, stood ready to play his part in determining which version of the truth would ultimately prevail. Part 3. The grand ballroom of Ravensholm Palace had never looked more magnificent as it welcomed the delegation from Aldermere. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across the assembled dignitaries, while the royal orchestra provided an elegant musical backdrop to what appeared to be a routine diplomatic celebration. Beneath the surface glamour, however, an intricate operation was unfolding that would determine the fate of the queen consort and potentially reshape the future of the monarchy itself. Prince William moved through the reception with practiced grace, engaging in diplomatic pleasantries while his attention remained focused on Lady Catherine's movements. She appeared radiant in her emerald gown, playing her role as gracious hostess with the same skill she had demonstrated throughout her years as queen consort. To the casual observer, nothing seemed amiss, but William's trained eye caught subtle signs of nervous energy that suggested she was preparing for something significant. Marcus Sterling maintained his position in the security detail, his enhanced role in the evening's operation hidden beneath his ceremonial uniform. The communication device concealed in his ear provided constant updates on Lady Catherine's location and activities. The surveillance team had identified 3 potential windows of opportunity when she might attempt to slip away from the main reception for her planned clandestine meeting. The first opportunity came during the formal dinner when Lady Catherine excused herself under the pretense of checking on arrangements for the next day's garden party. Marcus discreetly followed her route through the palace corridors, maintaining visual contact while remaining undetected. However, instead of proceeding to meet with unknown contacts, Lady Catherine simply spoke briefly with the head of household staff before returning to the dinner. The surveillance team remained alert for her next move. The breakthrough came during the post-dinner entertainment, when Lady Catherine made a second departure from the main reception hall. This time, her route led toward the East Wing, away from any official palace business and into an area that would be largely deserted during the evening's festivities. Marcus activated his communication device to alert the operation team while maintaining careful surveillance of the queen consort's movements. Lady Catherine's destination proved to be the private chapel, a location that provided both privacy and multiple exit routes should she need to escape quickly. Marcus positioned himself where he could observe the entrance while remaining hidden from view. Within minutes, a figure appeared from the shadows and approached the chapel entrance. The individual was dressed in palace staff uniform, providing perfect camouflage among the evening's service personnel. The meeting that unfolded in the chapel exceeded even the most pessimistic expectations of the investigation team. Through advanced surveillance equipment, they were able to document an exchange of documents and what appeared to be detailed discussion of sensitive royal business. Lady Catherine provided information about upcoming diplomatic initiatives, internal palace security procedures, and personal details about the royal family that could prove devastating in the wrong hands. Prince William listened to the real-time reports from the surveillance team with a mixture of heartbreak and determination. The woman he had trusted as a mother figure was systematically betraying everything the royal family represented. The scope of the information she was sharing suggested that her treachery extended far beyond this single meeting and represented a comprehensive intelligence operation that had been developing over months or possibly years. The most damaging revelation came when Lady Catherine handed over what appeared to be copies of official state documents, including diplomatic correspondence and intelligence briefings that should never have been accessible to her. The security implications were staggering, as these documents could compromise ongoing negotiations with multiple foreign governments and potentially endanger intelligence assets operating abroad. Marcus watched in fascination and horror as the meeting concluded with Lady Catherine receiving what appeared to be a significant sum of money, along with detailed instructions for future contact. The financial aspect added another dimension to her betrayal, transforming it from potential ideological opposition to straightforward espionage for profit. The implications for prosecuting her case became significantly more serious, with evidence of monetary compensation for her treachery. As Lady Catherine prepared to return to the reception, the operation team faced a critical decision about when and how to confront her with their evidence. Prince William had authorized her immediate detention if the meeting produced proof of treasonous activity, but the presence of foreign dignitaries complicated any dramatic action that might create an international incident. The decision was made to allow Lady Catherine to return to the reception while detailed plans were finalized for her confrontation. This approach would provide time for analysis of the surveillance evidence and ensure that any action taken would be legally sound and politically defensible. However, it also meant maintaining the charade of normalcy while knowing that a traitor walked among them. Lady Catherine's return to the grand ballroom was masterful in its apparent normalcy. She resumed her hostess duties without any sign of the momentous meeting that had just concluded. engaging in conversation with foreign dignitaries and palace guests as if nothing unusual had occurred. Her composure under such circumstances suggested a level of deception and self-control that made everyone wonder how long she had been living this double life. The remainder of the evening proceeded according to official protocol, but the atmosphere among those aware of the investigation crackled with tension. Prince William delivered his scheduled remarks to the visiting delegation while internally grappling with the knowledge that his stepmother had just committed what amounted to treason against the crown. The weight of that realization settled heavily upon him as he contemplated the actions he would need to take. Marcus Sterling concluded his surveillance duties as the reception drew to a close, knowing that his role in exposing Lady Catherine's treachery was nearly complete. The guard, who had first noticed her suspicious behavior, had provided the intelligence that unraveled what appeared to be a sophisticated espionage operation. His loyalty to the crown had been tested and proven, but the personal cost of that loyalty would haunt him for the rest of his career. The evidence gathered during the state visit reception was overwhelming and undeniable. Lady Catherine had been caught in the act of providing classified information to unauthorized individuals, accepting payment for her treachery, and making arrangements for ongoing intelligence sharing. The legal case against her was strong, but the political and personal ramifications of her exposure would create challenges that extended far beyond the criminal justice system. As the foreign dignitaries retired to their guest quarters and the palace staff began cleaning up from the evening's festivities, Prince William faced the grim task of deciding how to proceed with the most serious case of royal betrayal in modern history. The Queen Consort would need to be confronted with the evidence of her crimes, but the timing and manner of that confrontation would determine not only her fate, but also the reputation and stability of the monarchy itself. The night that had begun with diplomatic celebration was ending with the exposure of treachery at the highest levels of the royal household. Marcus Sterling had fulfilled his duty to the crown by uncovering the truth, but that truth would now test the resilience and wisdom of the institution he had sworn to protect. Part 4 dawn broke over Ravensholm Palace with an unusual stillness that seemed to reflect the gravity of the decisions being made in Prince William's private study. The evidence from the previous evening had been analyzed, verified, and compiled into a comprehensive dossier that painted an undeniable picture of Lady Catherine's betrayal. The time for decisive action had arrived, and the prince steeled himself for what would be the most difficult confrontation of his life. The decision to handle the initial confrontation privately, before involving law enforcement agencies, reflected Prince William's understanding of the delicate balance between justice and the monarchy's reputation. Lady Catherine deserved the opportunity to explain her actions. Though the evidence against her appeared overwhelming and irrefutable, the prince hoped that direct confrontation might provide insights into her motivations and the full extent of her treacherous activities. Lady Catherine arrived at the prince's study expecting a routine briefing about the remaining events planned for the state visit. Her composed demeanor and professional attire suggested no awareness of the storm that was about to engulf her carefully constructed world. Prince William noted her calm confidence and wondered whether it represented remarkable self-control or genuine innocence of the surveillance that had documented her crimes. The confrontation began quietly, as Prince William presented the surveillance photographs and audio recordings from her clandestine meeting. Lady Catherine's reaction was immediate and dramatic. The composed mask she had maintained for months dissolved into shock, denial, and ultimately defiant admission. The transformation was startling in its completeness, revealing a woman who had been living in elaborate deception for far longer than anyone had suspected. Lady Catherine's explanation, when it finally came, revealed motivations that were more complex and troubling than simple greed or ideological opposition. She claimed to have been coerced into providing information through threats against her family members, painting herself as a victim rather than a willing collaborator. However, the financial payments documented during surveillance suggested that coercion had evolved into willing participation over time. The scope of her intelligence sharing proved even more extensive than initially suspected. Lady Catherine admitted to providing information about royal family movements, state security procedures, diplomatic negotiations, and personal details that could be used for blackmail or manipulation. The breadth of her betrayal suggested that virtually no aspect of royal life had been protected from her treacherous activities. Prince William found himself grappling with emotions that ranged from heartbreak to fury as the full magnitude of Lady Catherine's deception became clear. the woman who had helped raise his younger siblings, who had supported the family through various crises, had systematically betrayed their trust while maintaining the facade of devoted loyalty. The personal dimension of her betrayal cut deeper than any political or security implications. The question of how to proceed with Lady Catherine's case created immediate challenges that extended beyond normal legal considerations. Her position as queen consort meant that any criminal prosecution would inevitably become a constitutional crisis that could destabilize the monarchy itself. The political opposition would certainly exploit such a scandal to question the fitness of the entire royal institution. Prince William's decision to confiscate Lady Catherine's passport represented the first concrete step in containing the damage from her exposure. The action would prevent any attempt at flight, while legal and political advisors determined the best approach for handling such an unprecedented situation. The symbolism of restricting her travel also served notice that her privileged position would no longer protect her from consequences. The involvement of intelligence services in questioning Lady Catherine revealed connections that shocked even the most experienced investigators. Her contacts were part of a larger network that had been attempting to penetrate the highest levels of government and monarchy for several years. Lady Catherine's recruitment represented a significant intelligence coup for hostile foreign powers seeking to influence British policy and decision-making. Marcus Sterling found himself called upon to provide detailed testimony about his observations and the methods he had used to uncover Lady Catherine's activities. His role in exposing the treachery earned him commendation from Prince William, but also placed him in an uncomfortable position as the man whose loyalty had destroyed the queen consort's life and position. The moral complexity of his situation would trouble him for years to come. The question of public disclosure created intense debate among Prince William's advisors. Complete transparency would demonstrate the monarchy's commitment to accountability and rule of law, but it would also provide ammunition for those seeking to abolish the royal institution entirely. The alternative of handling the matter quietly would preserve stability, but potentially create larger scandals if the truth emerged through other channels. Lady Catherine's removal from all official duties proceeded swiftly but discreetly, with her public appearances cancelled under the cover of sudden illness. The palace staff was briefed on a need-to-know basis, with most believing that the queen consort was suffering from stress-related health problems. Only the most senior officials knew the true reason for her sudden absence from royal functions. The international implications of Lady Catherine's espionage activities required delicate diplomatic management to prevent damage to relationships with allied nations whose intelligence might have been compromised. Prince William personally briefed key ambassadors about the situation, seeking to contain potential fallout while ensuring that security partnerships remained intact despite the breach at the highest levels of the royal household. The legal proceedings against Lady Catherine would ultimately be handled through specialized courts designed to protect state secrets while ensuring due process. Her cooperation with investigators, prompted by the overwhelming evidence against her, provided valuable intelligence about foreign operations targeting the British government and monarchy. However, her assistance could not erase the fundamental betrayal of trust that had made such operations possible. Prince William's decision to assume greater responsibilities for palace security reflected his determination to prevent future breaches of royal confidentiality. The reorganization would involve enhanced vetting procedures, regular security reviews, and improved surveillance capabilities designed to detect suspicious activities before they could compromise sensitive information. The changes represented a fundamental shift toward treating the palace more like a high-security government facility. Marcus Sterling received promotion to deputy head of palace security in recognition of his crucial role in uncovering the conspiracy. His career advancement came with mixed emotions, as he understood that his success was built upon the destruction of someone he had once respected and protected. The guard, who had started as a loyal servant, had become an instrument of justice, whose actions would be remembered long after his retirement. The aftermath of Lady Catherine's exposure would reshape the monarchy's approach to internal security and public accountability. Prince William's handling of the crisis demonstrated the leadership qualities that would serve him well as future king, but the personal cost of betrayal by someone so close to the family would influence his relationships and decision-making for years to come. The ultimate betrayal had been exposed and contained, but its consequences would ripple through the royal institution for decades. Marcus Sterling had fulfilled his oath to protect the crown, even when that protection required destroying the life of the queen consort herself. The truth had prevailed, but at a cost that none of them could have anticipated when the investigation began with whispered conversations in shadowed palace corridors. In the end, Lady Catherine's fall from grace served as a sobering reminder that privilege and position provide no immunity from the consequences of betrayal. The guard whose loyalty had exposed her treachery had proven that duty to the crown superseded personal relationships and comfortable assumptions about those entrusted with the monarchy's most precious secrets.